don't understand. I sent it 10 minutes ago, and when I look back, there's nothing in there. Oh, so weird. Anyway, welcome everybody.
Just one more conspiracy. One
Yeah,
more conspiracy I have to look into.
this time the Facebook conspiracy, I guess. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. It's the Friday before, and tension is climbing. Is it? Million people coming here. Million people coming here, so they say. Right. For the latest in news about Niagara Falls, news in Niagara Falls, you should listen to Talking Niagara. Welcome to our talk show. It's Friday, April the 5th. Welcome everybody. Okay, so here's a quick any pointers from the last 24 hours, Dave?
No, but I'm kind of a bum that Angela Brown added some had some pretty good posts there, and I wasn't able to read them more thoroughly. So maybe we can look at. I entered the last one you see there. That's from her Facebook site, and I thought we could look into that too. She's offered up some considerations towards the carbon tax. In the end, it just makes it more confusing, but still, it's important to know those things. Right. I'm looking outside and there's snow on the ground. Whoa.
Yeah, I know there's snow here. It's snowing right now, but yet when I go outside, it's actually not cold enough for snow.
Another conspiracy we got to get to the bottom of.
All right. Well, we'll see what we can get through.
Is this COVID snow?
COVID snow. Okay, so there's Mike saying his normal good morning. All right.
Metaphysical Mike, not good morning. Remember, it's metaphysical Mike. He's offering that.
You can
as an option. Morning, is it or isn't it?
You can take it the way you want, or you can just take it as a simple greeting of good morning to everyone.
Not on this conspiracy show, you can't. We're drilling down deep on what seems to be an ordinary good morning or morning. Who knows?
Okay, so more Canadians say they trust no one, none of the federal political parties when it comes to economic management. So there's more trust none than they trust Justin Trudeau right now.
Well, yeah, he's at the bottom of the list, but yeah. Then again, he's been in government he's been running the government.
Yeah,
he's been the top dog in the government. I don't know who's really running it, but he's the spokesperson. Really,
he's been running it for 9 years, hasn't he?
Yes, and so of course by this time, with massive inflation, with housing costs exploding, with all sorts of practical problems, and they want to, and of course they're steering towards climate change, which at this particular time is not really a lot on people's minds as much. Canadians are concerned about climate change, that generally speaking, but they're more worried about their day-to-day kitchen table problems. Can we get the car fixed? Can we, can we get the new furnace in? Can we all these? Can we get the kids to school, or what's going on there? And I think in a situation like that, when there's been, things like the Arrive Cam app, which was what was
Arrive Scam
200 times more expensive than it was supposed to be. Something insane. And they so of course, and there's been all kinds of scandals, one or another, where the cost of things have exploded, or they spent money, overspent here and there. The cost of certain government, and we don't even have an airplane that gets our prime minister here to there. They can't even fix it. our armed forces are in desperate shape and we're sending our money to another war. We gave $8 billion to Ukraine, but took $1 billion away from our underserved, under-equipped military. So
Yeah.
when people do that kind of thing, of course he's going to lose ground. He's not trusted. He's a kid with a irresponsible kid with a credit card who thinks he's responsible. He buys the cool things that he thinks he needs. But
Yeah.
what about Polyev? What does he look like in this poll?
Well, he's
Do the
leading.
Canadians, do the Canadians trust him to be a good steward of the budget?
Well, he came out. Conservatives came out on top when Canadians asked who they most trust for reasonable management of finances in the government of Canada. Yeah, so he had a 16
Yeah, but
point lead over the Liberals.
in the survey, the young 18 to 34 age group specifically, conservatives also came up on top with 30% of the younger Canadians saying they trust Poilievre's party the most. 30% among that age group. That has got to throw the fear of God into the Liberals.
Yeah, 18
That
to
is
30.
who their whole objective is, to try to get the younger, more idealistic voter on their
Yeah,
side.
yeah,
But
that's fairly true.
yeah, and they count on the young. They count on women, and they count on the women's votes and the younger folks' votes. Those are the two that are big. I mean, Quebec, of course, is a big one, and they're big on climate change. But that's easy for them to do because they have huge amounts of cheap hydroelectric power, abundance amounts that they can send into the states. So for them to convert over to electrical and have very cheap power and all that, that's it's kind of easier for a Quebecer to be able to say yes, we need to protect the environment when they don't have to rely so much on gas and oil or coal or whatever what the rest of us have to.
Yeah.
Now Ontario's not too bad.
Well,
We have gas
here's
generators,
the
but
funny thing is about that. You were talking about the 18 to 34 numbers. So Conservatives came out on top with 30%. The Liberals ranked fourth at 14.2%. So they're behind None and the NDP. Wow.
so what does that tell you? That even if you're a young person who has a lot of stress about climate change, and younger voters do, and you're a politician who has wasted a lot of money and whose programs have not really showed much. Even the carbon tax is not supposed to show any real be effective until 2030 or something like that, if the carbon tax keeps going up. Mike Cushman says Polyev let trash Canadian currency and go to crypto. Yeah, I think he learned his lesson on that one, Mike. That's one of the things they were able to keep jumping all over him on. Oh, he wants you to go Bitcoin, all that. So that's one of the mistakes he did make, and they're going to bring that up over and over again during the election time next year. I'm sure of it. Right now, though, Trudeau, this is not a good survey, but he knows where to target now. As you can see, that a lot of his programs for housing and quick programs we talked about yesterday that we were worried that were coming out too quickly, too fast, without due consideration, like the $6 billion he's putting into infrastructure and housing, and the massive amounts of money they're infusing into school food programs. Suddenly, all this has become important because he has to reignite his base. They didn't see anything coming, but it won't work so well for him if Singh can sing about his own triumphs in this regard, which he hasn't done. He hasn't taken enough credit for the liberal initiatives of late. So it looks like the Liberals are panicking basically a lot, which means they've left the car um, unrepaired for. They left the tires
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
bald and they let the oil get
Oh
old.
yeah.
Now they suddenly got to fix everything real quick before the election comes next year, and they have to start looking good. Um,
Oh yeah. And what's the chances that's going to happen? Because when it comes to economic woes, they are very hard to fix very quickly.
well, yeah, they are, but they have a whole long time to do it. And remember, impression means a lot more than the actual thing. Sometimes they're going to start digging up a lot of dirt on the conservatives. They're going to start forcing the conservatives to make announcements. Polyev is, although, and they're going to be waiting for all kinds of dirt that they can use on the conservatives. That's worked very well for them in the past. However, the conservatives have the trump card on that. I hate to use the word Trump, but but the trump card on that because Justin dressed up so often as a blackface guy. They can never use that. Every time they bring up the conservatives are racist kind of thing, then all of a sudden that picture pops up of liberals, and they keep it back. They don't overuse it, but every time the liberals try to say, "Oh well, them conservatives are so racist," and pop up comes that picture of Justin Trudeau sticking out his tongue with a blackface and a turban on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they can't use that. So the only thing that, oddly enough, the best thing the liberals can do is get off their seats and start doing some of these things. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be in good shape. And as far as the conservatives go, as long as they don't make too many mistakes, they're going to be in the government, whether they're going to be next time around. Mike Cushman says when the auditor generals have been releasing reports that are ignored and cast aside by government's corruption is obvious. Auditing is the answer, yet our government ignores them. Yes, and that's on every level. Do you remember Doug Ford telling the auditor she's outside her lane? Not a good look, Doug. Not a good look.
Yeah.
You don't tell the auditor general you're snooping where you shouldn't snoop. You're reporting on things you shouldn't report on. No, 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 Doug. That you just got to smile. Oh, we'll fix that, and then just ignore it. But you're right. The Trudeau government has ignored many of the things. The glue that holds the Liberal government together is Trudeau. He is the sort of the icon of
Yeah.
the
He's the
group.
poster boy.
Yeah,
He's
he's
the
the poster
poster
boy.
boy.
He has been.
He's still loved by a certain set of of women who seem to think he's the dishy one. They're going to vote for him because he's such a dish.
Yeah, and everyone I talk to, American women, other women, and that's the first thing they mention. Oh, the prime minister is such a good looking guy, and then we find by our own polls that um, um, much more than usual amount of women vote for him,
Yeah.
vote for liberals. I'm not, I'm not so. And when you're pretty and you say all the nice things, it's appealing when you say all the right things, but it's not working in Europe for him anymore. I guess he's not as well liked there. He was a big hit when he first came on for the first 5 years, but then over and over afterwards, they make fun of him now as the guy that looks good but can't do anything. But that comes with the territory if you're prime minister for that period of time. No matter if you look like Shrek or if you look like the Beauty or the Beast, whatever you look like, you're going to get it at this point in time. If particularly with all the inefficiencies that the feds have had so far. I think a lot of it has to do too with there's never been a consensus on the carbon tax. too.
Oh, yeah.
He says it's going to work, and others say it's not going to work. And there's
Oh,
never anyone that tells you that it's going to work positively, no matter who you listen to or who you read. You can't
well,
be convinced by anyone.
and then we've got this. Then we've got this. Oh, come on. Then we got this farmer who weighed in on the federal tax, on the carbon tax. So, um, yeah,
That's a
Jeff,
video.
Jeff Harrison, of the chair of the Grain Farmers of Ontario, says the carbon tax rebate only covers 15% of the extra cost from carbon tax.
That's a very good little. I'm glad they did it because he is a spokesperson for the grain farmers of Ontario, and he is in connection with the grain farmers throughout Canada. And he is saying that the farmers have enough to worry about. The carbon tax is another burden to them. They don't
Yeah,
recover too much. He says the carbon tax is making product their product, adding cost to the product that makes their grain uncompetitive in the world market. And
yeah,
he's saying that is what we're supposed to do. Canada, being Canada and a huge grain producer and other farm goods, he said you're putting a tax on, you're putting an added layer of stress. He says farmer suicides and difficulty. He says this is a job that not a whole lot of people do not want to do, and what you're doing is always making it harder and harder for them. And the carbon tax is one of those things. He says that it makes the grain that they have uncompetitive in the world market,
yeah.
and and they are still expected to put good food on the shelves, basically. And with the carbon tax just annoying, and to watch that little video, you can't share it on Facebook, but you can share it on a messenger. I tried to share it on Facebook, but I forgot about the feud between Facebook
Yeah,
and the Canadian government, so it
yeah.
won't let you share news articles on Facebook itself. But he makes a very good case. Now, he is, like I said, the grain farmer, the chair of the Grain Farmers of Ontario, and he's exasperated about the
Of course.
carbon tax and how it's increased the cost of production, and he also says that they could do more with that money to make things more environmentally better than being charged uh, charged carbon tax. Now, not only do they have charged the carbon tax, but they have to. That's one more thing they have to keep an eye on in their bookkeeping and stuff.
Yeah.
He claims that giving back that money, they can do. They're always stewards of the land, and they're always trying to make things more environmentally better in one way or another. And he says they're being their job for a very long time.
Well,
And
that's the same message. That's the same message we've been hearing from local farmers here. You know, we got a couple of local farmers who chime in on Facebook from time to time. In southern Ontario that I regularly see, and they're the same message, absolute same message.
yes, and um, and it's very unclear to me. I can understand, yeah, Canadians being what we are, we want to do something about climate change, but what the government says is we don't trust you, we can't educate you in carbon, so what we're going to do is we're going to force you. We're going to force you into a behavior, and we're going to force you in the behavior by charging you a lot more money for the gas you have, just like tobacco tax
Yeah.
or liquor tax. Well, it still isn't fully like. So what happens then is you get you know cigarettes smuggled in and all this other stuff. But basically speaking, they're treating it like a sin tax.
Yeah.
So you're a sinner. You need gas, but we don't. Too bad, buddy. We're gonna direct your behavior. We're gonna make it hard for you. We're gonna hurt you. We're gonna hurt you every time you go to the gas tank and fill up. And if we hurt you enough, then you're going to change your ways. If we
Yeah.
hurt you enough, you're going to change your power for your heating from gas to electric. If we hurt you enough, you're going to buy electric car. And meanwhile, you can't hurt somebody enough at the lower end of the economic scale. They're going to be stuck with their old clunker. They're
Yeah.
not going to be able to buy an electric car.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that the way to
Absolutely.
do it? Is
Yeah.
that the way to do it? We're going to
Absolutely.
hurt you. We're going to hurt you until you do
Well,
what
when
we
you
want you to
consider
do.
when you consider that you go out, just take the average. When I went and looked about this, I looked at an average car that was in the 25 to 35 range, and I looked at, okay, so what's the electric version of that car? The very same car. It's in the 40 to 55 range.
Well, Ford Motor Company in Ontario is delaying a lot of their electric production until 2027. The market's just not there yet. If the federal government really wanted to make a big switch like that, it would subsidize electric vehicles.
Yeah.
It would give you
And,
money rather
and
than a
Mike,
rebate, carbon rebate. They would give you a rebate if you owned an electric vehicle.
yeah, and
A
here
big
we go. Mike is basically saying the failure to the failure is no alternatives that are better. Absolutely, 100%. They have to have the alternatives in place before you tax the before you tax people out of gas. Yeah,
before you tax the excrement out of people.
yeah,
Uh, that's exactly right, Mike. Everybody wants to do something about carbon. I certainly do.
yeah.
I do, but I don't really see what I see is a bunch of elitists in Ottawa saying, "How do we force those peons into doing what they're supposed to do? We can't educate them because they're too stupid. So what we'll do is we're going to force them into it. That'll get us some
Hey,
votes
I've
from
got
people who think that's a good idea to force the peons into doing that."
I've got the way that they've got to do it. You see, the government's got to go and buy has got to go and buy 10 million Teslas and go and give them out to the poorest of the people in the across the country. Like that's
Elon
going to
Musk would
happen.
love it.
Yeah, like that's going to happen, eh? All right, let's move on, shall we?
Okay, doke.
Right. So the yeah, the U.S. UN Security Council fails to condemn the strike on Iran on the Iranian embassy in Syria.
Well,
So
this is a difficult one because let's face it, the condemnation comes from Russia,
yeah,
and the the UN Security Council would be very, very embarrassed, and it would sound like rather hypocritical too that they could condemn uh, because it's what they've said about Russia. So if they support Russia in this particular case, it would look bad on them, and I think that's more of it than anything.
oh
But
yeah, yeah,
but the Russians have used this, and they've called the U.S. and their little following dogs, France and Britain, uh, as they're the ones that denied the motion, basically the draft, the attack. So Russia wants the United Nations to condemn the attack on the Iranian embassy compound, and of course, because the Russians are depending a lot now on the Iranians for supplies of weapons and so on, and they have a tight relationship right now.
but
So of course Russia's going to come in, and it's going to make the West very hypocritical looking. It says here that this serves as this is a Russia statement. This serves as a clear illustration of the double standards employed by the Western troika, U.S., France, and Britain, and
yeah,
their actual rather than declarative approach to legality and order in the international context. Well, they certainly do have a point, don't they?
Well, and Iran's supreme leader threatens to slap Israel after after their strike on the consulate in the Syrian capital, and the supreme leader of Iran is fuming. I think would be the best way to sum it up. Ayatollah Al Khamenei said that Israel will continue to fail on the battlefield in Gaza and its defeats will bring it closer to collapse. I don't know about that, but hey,
Well, all the Iran fights all its battles with proxies, or as many of they can with proxies. That is a clever way of counterbalancing the forces of the West in the area. Plus, also making sure that Iran Shias. Remember, there's a lot of religious overtones to this too. However, what we're doing now, what the West is doing now, is we're forcing the disparate types of I don't know groups to collect all under one. We used to be able to the West. We used to be able to count on Shia and Sunni friction. That the Sunnis and the Sunnis and the Shiites were fighting among themselves enough,
yeah,
so that was good. But now what's happening is because of the actions of Israel and the United States in particular, these groups are getting together. So Shias and Sunnis are getting together. Hamas is being supplied by Iran, which is a Shia government. I mean, in Iran, Sunnis might not be looked upon too well. Shias are not looked upon too well in Saudi Arabia. The Alawite group that runs Syria is the Alawites are a Shia offshoot. So there's a lot of religious things here we don't understand in the West, and but this the Russians have been able to use this particular incident as a show that the West has not only divided but are hypocritical.
yeah,
When they talk about Russia doing this and that, when the similar situation comes up, they won't address it. In this particular case, the Israelis have attacked an embassy. Those embassies are supposed to be sacrosanct. The embassy, I think the 1961 Vienna Convention and the
that,
1973 Convention have all made embassies sacrosanct. This was a
yeah,
precision strike,
absolutely.
though, in consular buildings beside the embassy, and that's the excuse. Really wasn't an embassy; it was a consular buildings beside it. But we here in Canada should be very, very worried about this because our embassy was right beside that
Yeah,
in Damascus. So what if one of those bombs went astray? And we know the Israelis are not that good at it anymore, are they? They just killed seven aid workers who told them exactly what route they were going to take, exactly what cars they were going to take, and how to get from A to B. And they were supposed to be running down a safe road. And the Israelis
yeah.
killed them all. 3 different strikes. So we
You know
know the
how many
Israelis
of
don't
these?
really have
Yeah,
their stuff together. They could have that strike. If I was a Canadian right now, I'd be worried about that because that strike could have gone astray.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the interesting thing, the interesting thing is that you know I'm surprised it's taken this long to actually get this kind of these sort of things happening. I'm surprised that there hasn't been attacks on embassies in the past in this regard.
We know that the attack on the Iranian embassy in London, I remember that one. I remember looking at the shell of it afterwards when the SAS attacked that particular embassy. But do
Yeah, but that was
remember,
because of hostage situation. That's entirely different.
That's exactly right, and they had to be
Yeah.
very careful about that. And but the other one I was going to mention in London was the Libyan embassy. Now, the Libyan
And again,
embassy was
that was
surrounded.
the shooting.
Yes, and they shot out of the embassy and they killed a
Yeah.
young woman constable.
Yeah. And they
And
actually, the irony is they shot my the person who used to sit in my chair weeks beforehand, who had previously decided to leave the company. He was away from his desk at the coffee, at the, getting coffee, and they shot up his chair.
yeah, well, he got lucky there, but the young
He got
constable
lucky
did
there.
not.
Yeah. No, the
And
copper did
the
not.
embassy, the embassy is so sacrosanct that they had to let those people go, and they
Yeah.
couldn't charge them with anything.
It took it took 20 years to get those people to justice. And even there,
Yes,
we're not entirely sure it was the right people.
and here's another incident. We've had diplomats here raping women,
Yeah.
getting in car accidents and killing people, and they're diplomats from different countries, and they're protected from the law. And this was a big problem, I think, when one of the diplomats from somewhere, I think it was an African nation. I'm not sure though, but they had been driving drunk or something, and I can't remember exactly the incidences, but let's say it was a serious crime for anyone else, and they were charged. But then they had to drop the charges, and there was all kinds of because there was diplomatic immunity. Uh, so it's a very awkward thing.
It might
Metaphysical
raise.
Mike Cushman says Russia should have no say at the UN right now.
I agree.
Unfortunately,
I,
they've said the same thing about the US and Britain many times as well because of the wars that they've got into the US war in Iraq and Vietnam, Britain's entanglements here and there. Unfortunately, you got the big bomb, you got to vote.
yeah.
Uh,
And the other question that I agree with Mike upon is largely those with the power of the veto generally end up being bullies in the new UN Security Council. That whole situation probably needs to be looked at. Yes, it's correct that Russia should not be in a position of holding a veto right now. Russia should not be in a position of saying a thing in the UN Security Council right now because they're at war in their own, that war with a neighboring nation, right?
Russia's the permanent
Yeah, I know it's a
member
permanent.
of the Security
Yeah,
Council, and they have veto power. Who are the countries that have veto power? China, Russia, France, Britain.
France.
France and Britain are there. They got in on the tail end of their power. They're not so powerful
But
anymore.
the reason for France and Britain is because they're the watchdogs from Europe, if you get what I mean,
Yeah, it could be.
from the
So they're
European.
also the nuclear powers of Europe,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Who are the
exactly.
nuclear powers of Europe? France and Britain. There's no other one, except for Russia, of course, which is kind of different. So you have France and Britain are the nuclear powers of Europe. There's
Yeah.
China. So
Well,
who has the permanent right?
these are
China, massive
these are
amounts
the
of
permanent.
nuclear
Those
capability.
five are the permanent members. Yeah, absolutely, of the UN Council, right? But the problem here is with Russia being at war, Russia shouldn't be having a say.
There is no rules for that. You're going to
Yeah,
make a
there
rule all of
isn't.
a sudden.
I know. I
So
know.
like, you're going to do
Yeah.
that. Look, you see the complication here,
Oh, I know.
right?
Absolutely, I see the complication. Yeah.
Right
All
now
right.
the US is involved in a war in Gaza, supplying weapons to kill thousands of people. They should be shut out too, don't you think, because of what they're doing? If
Well,
Russia is going to be shut out,
talking
well, the
about.
United States has to be shut out because they're supplying weapons to Gaza.
Yep.
How about France? What about Britain? Britain making a lot of coin on the weapons it's selling to Gaza right now. So they too should be shut out, shouldn't they?
Good. Also, good points. Right. Yeah. Absolutely good points. All right. So Israel has promised to open new humanitarian aid routes into Gaza after being threatened on last Thursday with an ultimatum. Yesterday with an ultimatum from the US. So basically, um, Biden's holding no punches right now, and basically saying that Israel must change how it's handling the war against Hamas, including allowing new humanitarian crossings into Gaza.
Well, it's very interesting to me because up until now, Netanyahu has snubbed both Biden and Blinken. He's pretty much lifted the middle finger up to them every time they've has said something. Look, you're
Yeah, quite.
overdoing it, and they've been telling him for months that he's been overdoing it. Number one, uh, it does look like Netanyahu wants revenge, but he also has to make up for his embarrassment. He is the one that caused this in the first place because he's the one who's caused this in the first place because he did not make Israel strong. He was supposed to have had the defenses all around Gaza very tight and very strong, and it was weaker than anything. The soldiers that Hamas attacked were unprepared. The whole system was unprepared. They were able to go up to the fences with bulldozers and drag them down and go into Israel, do what they wanted to do. I mean, it cost them 1,500 Hamas fighters to do it, but they did it. And then they stole a bunch of people and brought them back. In the meantime, did some hideous things along the way.
Yeah.
And Murphy's Law, they ran into a bunch of kids having a party and made even things worse. We will never know exactly how badly Netanyahu messed up there. He's supposed to have said that everything is very safe, and then of course that happens. So Netanyahu is in big trouble, and he's been able to snub the U.S. and drag this war out as long as he can because it means political survival to him. That's one of the motivations there. Plus,
Yeah.
he's always wanted to get rid of the people out of Gaza and the West Bank. That is without doubt. He
Yeah.
wants them out. They should be, transferred, which means purged, get them out of there. So he has that as part of motivation, and he knows how to use U.S. politics against themselves. Over half of the House of Representatives take APAC money. APAC, even if you don't take APAC money, APAC is the Israeli lobby is very scary because they will go against you. Like, for instance, they can't touch Bernie Sanders, right? Well, he's a Jew, basically against Israel's policies, so they can't touch him. But they can go to somebody. Let's say you get a Democrat and a Republican, and one of them, doesn't matter which one, has reservations about Israel. Well, the APAC will go in with their money. They'll help make attack ads. They'll do anything. Their objective, the raison d'etre, is to get politicians in there that see it their way. And not only that, they coach you. They coach you on how to represent Israel better. And here's a bunch of money for your campaign.
That's a whole. I have major problems with that. Is that one country impacting another democracy? Nah, that's bad. All right. Anyway,
That's pretty hard. And
yeah,
but so this time Biden has had enough. And I think the reason why Netanyahu and the Israeli government can't push it anymore, can't flip the bird to Biden and Blinken anymore, is not because they can't control it, it's because APAC is looking bad, worse
yeah,
and worse and worse. APAC is being quiet, and nobody usually says much about APAC. Almost every election, it's sort of kept in the back a little bit. It pops up and then it goes away. Nobody wants APAC to be very well known about. Now APAC is all over the place, and criticisms of APAC are upside down and backwards. I think the Israelis now will have to cooperate with Biden because they're going to lose a lot of their support, APEC support. This, I think, is more important to them than Gaza right now. If they lose that APEC support, that is their power inside the U.S. They own a lot of politicians, and right now, if politicians see that being part of APEC is not a good thing, and people have a sour look at that, uh, they're losing their power, and they'll drop their APEC affiliation.
Yeah,
That's my point on that. That's my opinion right now.
yeah. Okay, let's move on. Um, Doug Ford got into a little bit of trouble with this one. He said he wants all spots in medical schools to be reserved for students from the province, but in an earlier statement, he actually misstated. He said he wanted all spots in Ontario universities reserved for Ontario students.
Yeah, in a Biden-like reversal, basically his staff had to come out and clarify,
Yeah,
and what he said right up front, and even if he just said it and maybe didn't mean it as it sounded, like 100% of Ontario students have to be taken care of first before anyone else.
I
That's
think
going to
that is,
get him.
yeah.
That don't you think that's going to get him ballot box favor?
Well, yeah. If it's said that way, you kind of go, well, absolutely, of course, because it's not being, it's being discriminatory insofar as it's saying we support Ontario first. It's not saying colours of skin of Ontarians. It's saying Ontario should get places in medical schools before foreign students do. And by foreign, it also means non Ontarians.
Well, I agree with him basically. And are you going to call me a racist? I agree with him. I agree. This is a medical school or whatever school is being supported by the Ontario government. The Ontario government and the federal government offset a lot of our education expenses. That's why the
Yeah.
university does not put you into debtor's prison like it does in the United States. You know a lot
It
of the
can
cost
still
of
cost you a lot
universities are
of.
offset here by the Canadian taxpayer. So wouldn't you think that Canadians should have priority?
Absolutely, they should, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, they should, right? And Ontario medical, we have a medical crisis in Ontario right now. We've talked about that in the past, how we don't have enough doctors and nurses. So having students going through Ontario medical schools is an important thing, and having Ontario students at Ontario medical schools is even more important, because what you don't want to do is to train a bunch of doctors that are going to go run away once they qualify.
But they don't. They don't. They One of the things they do when they come over and get here and get educated is they stay here. Almost all of them
Yeah,
do.
I know, I
This
know.
is this I see as a problem. It's the brain drain problem. Of course, we want the best and the brightest from other countries. However, when we do that, we take away the best and the brightest of developing countries who need the best and the brightest. You see what I mean? There's
Yeah, yeah,
we could say we only want the best and brightest. Come here, but that's not what's happening in our universities in a large part, as we found out from the federal government spokesperson who said that the universities had got greedy. They're bringing in anybody with a piece of paper that says they are qualified. They give them a Coconut College test. Do you know how to spell your name? Okay, here you go. You're allowed to come into this nuclear physics program. They are
yeah.
not screening you properly.
But you
And then
see, there are.
you get the corner store university. You get the corner mall university.
Yeah,
Joe's
yeah, I
astrophysics
know.
class
But
here.
hey, with that test, even I know of at least three different ways to spell my name. Each of them are correct in their individual culture. And each of those spellings of my name exist here in Ontario as well.
So what's that mean?
Well, I'm just saying, it's not just a case of spelling your name to get into school.
Yeah, you're right. You could, yeah,
Yeah.
well, a foreign student could do 3 or 4 different applications, just change his name spelling a little bit. Yeah, I'm sure that it happens. But there's, like he says, he wants to get rid of the 18% in medical school. But what I don't really like is this overreach here of the comp. Okay, so you see the Premier of Ontario, and he's kind of frustrated that the medical students, too many of them are for foreign students, and because we need them here. We should be educating our own. That's the guarantee that we'll have more doctors. With the other foreign students to come here and become doctors and that are more likely to stay here, but they could go to the States, which is a common thing too. So if you want Ontario doctors pretty much to stay here in Ontario, you educate Ontarians or at least Canadians anyway. So you can
Yeah.
see where he's going with this. I mean, I think he's not just looking for votes, but that I bet you will get him votes by saying Ontarians first. Whether he's sincere about that or not. But here's the NDP. Marty Stiles criticized Ford for his comments. The premier's comments are wildly disrespectful to thousands of students and internationally trained physicians with experience from across the world stuck waiting for residency spots so they can finally practice in our province. He is telling
That
skilled physicians from around the world looking to build a life in Ontario that they're simply not welcome here. Do you get that from
the
what Premier Ford
residency
said?
the residency spot question is a different question entirely. I spoke with I spoke with a medical student recently, and yeah, the residency issue is a big question. But residencies have always been hard to come by because there are, there's in any individual medical school, there are hundreds of students that come through the program and only a few residencies that are available at the end of the program.
So what you're basically saying, what I think too, is his comment was a rubbish comment.
I- Yeah,
It was a
it's
comment,
talking
not a
about a
well
different
considered comment.
issue. It's
It's an
talking about
attack.
a different issue. Yeah,
All
it's
right. Now
easy to attack on.
Here's another comment from the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. The Migrant Workers Line. I mean, seriously, the migrant workers, child medical school. What do they got to talk about there? The Migrant Worker Alliance for Change is out now. I don't even know why they quote these people because who are the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change? The Migrant Workers Alliance for Change is outraged at Premier Ford distracting from his chronic underfunding of public education by blowing a racist dog whistle that casts international students as outsiders, which will worsen the already pervasive anti-migrant climate, says
Um,
Sharon Rowe, a spokesperson for the organization. Migrants live here. We work here. We have families here. We are Ontarians. We deserve equal rights, not exclusion. Now, don't you think that's a bit of an overreach?
if they've got families here, does that mean they have permanent resident status? Because many of the
What
migrant
what
workers
does
on
what does
farms do
that
not.
mean though? They
Yeah.
don't like. I mean, the first part of it, the racist dog whistle. Do you get the racist dog whistle out of what Doug Ford says?
No, because in fact,
Nowhere near it, right?
when you look at the racial mix in Ontario, Doug Ford knows it as well as you and I know it, that it's not a pure white society we live in here in Ontario. There's probably at least a third of the people here in Ontario, at least that are actually come from non-white countries, not are not necessarily black but are Asian, South American, etc., etc. We've got a whole gamut of people here, and they're all part of our Ontario. Um, you know, our
All right.
Ontario.
Well, what about the dog whistle thing? Is it true? Is it a racist dog whistle?
I don't think so. I'm
Nowhere
not so
near it.
sure it is.
Nowhere
I'm not
near
so
it. I mean,
sure it is.
it's a
It's
stupid
easy,
comment. To me, that
it's
is a
easy to make a
stupid
stupid comment
comment.
like that. Yeah,
That
it's
is a
all too
stupid,
easy.
stupid comment. And how does whoever this person is, what gives them the right to say that Premier Ford is distracting from his chronic underfunding of public education? Show me how that's underfunded before they're saying it's that Doug Ford, the evil man, wants to take funding away from education, and he's a racist dog whistler. That is like, I mean, TVO. This article is from TVO today, and they put that down there, but they should be putting down what sort of organization is it that can make something like that. They're quoting it. They're giving this organization credibility, and that kind of a comment is just plain stupid.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it really is a distraction for what really is happening here.
yeah, and I'm seeing this what must be the same article essentially published through CP24.
So what we have here is there is a general frustration of institutions that have become more and more reliant on foreign students. They're making money hand over fist, and their acceptance of foreign students has really got over the board. The immigration people have had to weigh in here. The federal immigration people have had to weigh in here and tell us that we are over reliant on foreign students. Good morning, Niagara, from Karen Fraser. Yes, I tried to get Karen Fraser's show on YouTube yesterday, but they don't show the show. There's this kind of advertisement from or little video of Karen about
You got to
25
tune in
seconds
at
long.
you got to tune in at the right time, Dave.
I suppose so, and it's right before. It usually comes on right before Qantas TV Bingo.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're lucky for
You
Karen that
stick your video
that a lot of people
stick
will
your
get.
video recorder on, Dave. You got to leave your
Yeah,
video recorder before you go to the studio on a Sunday night.
yeah, it plays just before Qantas TV Bingo, so that's lucky for Karen because people will turn in early and see her show. Because of course they're going for Qantas TV Bingo and stars like me.
Well, not stars like Karen. Karen's a mega star in her own right. We know that.
Karen's Wonder Woman.
All right. Okay.
Anyway, so the government here really, like, I really, really, really hate this kind of a backlash.
Yeah.
Insidious, idiotic deflection. There is, if you want to go against Ford for his policies in education, show me. If you're telling me that he's a racist, that's why he's reducing funding, show me how that is. And as far as the organization who gives credibility to an institute like the Migrant Institute workers, who immediately just says this is a racist dog whistle, and it has nothing to do with students, their particular Migrant Workers Alliance really doesn't have much connection with the universities. So where are they chiming in?
And the other thing about that is that we've talked about the issues of migrant workers before, and their quote here, which is migrants live here. Yes, they do. During the summer months, we work here. Yes, they do. We all accept that, and we welcome them here. We have families here. No, they don't, because the whole point about migrant workers is that they have families back in their homeland, right? We are Ontarians. I'm not going to dispute that, and we deserve additional additional rights, not exclusion. Well, I do agree that there's been some issues in relation to migrant workers and their ability to get like um, what do you call it, healthcare, right? That
Well, the
needs
real problem here,
that needs to be
the real
sorted.
problem now, the real problem here with this article, it is about education. So, what TVO has done is allowed a lot of people to chime in that really don't have much to do with the education thing anyway, and so their expertise on their comment is not really that good or helpful,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
But the real problem is we a lot of our educational institutions are running in the red right now, and they have become over reliant on foreign students, and they let foreign students in with the smallest amount of credentials to do that. And so what happens is they get over here and they end up being Uber drivers or something like that. They're trying to stop up the holes on that because there's a number of things that are a problem, and one of them is residency. We have a lot of immigrations. We have a lot of uh, uh, asylum seekers. And we have, like I said, huge amounts of immigration, which means we don't have places for people to live. That is, we have a housing crisis. If we have a
yeah,
housing crisis and you are over reliant on foreign students, where are you going to house them? Where
yeah,
are you going to put them? Where are they going to stay? That's a big problem. The other problem is the the government is trying to keep the tuition rates frozen with a 1.3 billion top up. But how many times can they do that to the education? Like, that's keeping the tuition down for now. But sooner or later, it has to go up because of inflation and all other things. So the taxpayer cannot always come in and say, we're going to take all these students from all over the world, and we're all going to take our own particular students, and we're to make sure that they have a very low cost of living so they can get through school. And all these new people who come into the country are medical students. We hope that we can keep them all too. You can't do all of that. What has happened is they did not, as the federal government has pointed out, that the universities have turned a blind eye to the qualifications really required for the courses. And they've had people in countries, particularly India, but other countries too, where they have professionals going around enticing people to come to Canada to do their their
yeah,
their university. And of course, everybody and their brother and sister want to come. That would make sure that they would get a Western education and maybe give them a chance to stay in Canada. So you get and I saw one of the exposés on TV where they're in India, and you get some poor kid that's being told that if you give us X amount of money, we'll get you over there to Canada. And that happens quite a bit. And they get here and they can't qualify for the university, or the university they think they're going to is one of those corner store type universities. And the
yeah,
governments all look the other way, and the universities don't want to see it because they're making huge coin
yeah,
with
yeah.
uh, with students coming into the country.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a problem. That's a different problem. It's a problem, but it's a different problem. Okay, I'm gonna end this one. We're a little bit late, but I can't. I think we got 30 seconds on this. A parrot from Nova Scotia has been showing signs of depression since COVID-19 and is moving to Ontario for a change of scenery and to make new friends. Ha!
Not only as they coming to Ontario, they're coming to Ontario where there's a lot of different birds. Right here in Fort Erie, they need a couple more macaws. And if they need one more, they've got one macaw that doesn't have a mate here. So they want to bring that macaw from Halifax here. Now, the trouble with the museum, the Maritime Museum in Halifax, has this macaw there, and the macaw was very, very happy because there was a lot of human traffic coming back and forth, and he got a lot of attention. And he was raised in captivity from the very beginning, and he hasn't known any other birds very much, except for when he was in the first couple of years of life when he was in a pet store.
Yeah,
So he's pretty well ruled the roost there, and he's had a lot of attention. People come and talk to him and everything. When COVID came along, all the people stopped coming in, and he became depressed. So
yeah,
say people there and the veterinarians. So he hasn't really recovered. So what they think they can do is improve his life by sending him down here to Fort Erie, where he can get connected with other birds of a feather, so to speak. People like
Well,
bird people, just like
here's the
himself.
big question. That actually raises a question which we can't, we won't go into detail here, but other people have talked about is that, hey, even with humanity, pre-COVID and post-COVID, there's a massive difference. Things that people used to do, they're not doing post-COVID. Groups that people were in, social groups that people were in, are no longer happening.
Yeah, there's still a fear of COVID out there. I still go around and see people with masks on all the time.
Yep, I know.
Um, a friend of mine, he wore a mask. He wore an N93 mask anywhere he went. He didn't really see anybody for 4 years because he was helping taking care of his mom, who was ancient, and quite definitely didn't want to get her sick. Um, and I still see that happening out there. As a matter of fact, Honeymoon City Toastmasters is still even now only part in for their competitions are still only part in front of an audience. It's a hybrid system right now. Last year it was totally video. This year it's hybrid. Part of it, the main competition is going to be totally video. But next year they're going to open up to make sure that they can go back to persons. So it's been a long haul. But there is more than just human casualties, obviously, because the parrot has never recovered from the depression of sudden lack of people.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
what's going to happen to this poor parrot? He's going to come in here and he hasn't been among birds of a feather, as I'll say again, for all his life, since he was 2. And I think he's around 30, isn't he?
22.
22. Okay, so 20 years of his life, he hasn't been around another bird. So they're going to put him in with other birds, but they're going to have to introduce it little by little by little. Let's just hope that his innate instincts will come, will kick in, and he'll be able to stay with a mate. I don't know if he'll be able to procreate with the mate or anything like that, but if he gets a mate and they stay together, it may be much better for him in the long run. And the mate and the one isolated macaw that does not have a mate. Yeah. So this may be, I mean, it's an arranged marriage and everything, but sometimes they work.
All right. Well, I think with that thought, we can probably call it a day.
Yes, and it's a parrot that's been in a museum and it hasn't been with sailors, so we know whatever it says is not going to be too bad.
Yeah, it still probably says things like peekaboo. And what's the other ones that those kind of say? What a cracker!
Yeah, I don't know. They had one in Australia. I think it was like about 50 or 60 years old, and it really did belong to sailors. And then when it finally was on, like, they couldn't let children go near it because it swore really bad.
All right.
All right. Without further ado, I bid you to everyone, pray for peace. Finally, the U.S. has been embarrassed enough to force Israel to do what they're supposed to do. And let's hope this thing gets over with quick. Let's hope the children and all the innocents get fed. Something happened in Gaza. And let's hope that, I don't know, a meteor hits the earth, a little small one that has peace grains in it and then goes all over the earth and makes stop doing that stupid stuff.
All right.
Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.